He stopped counting the days somewhere around year 3, but the number never left him. 3,652. That's how many sunrises he'd opened his eyes to since the night everything collapsed. 10 years, give or take a few weeks. 10 years of waking up and remembering before his feet touched the floor. The house was small, a rental on the edge of a neighborhood that had seen better decades, vinyl siding the color of old teeth, a porch light he never turned on. He kept the blinds half drawn even during the day, let the rooms exist in that permanent twilight that didn't ask questions. The kitchen table had one chair. The couch faced a television he rarely watched. There were no photographs on the walls. He worked nights at a distribution center 40 minutes away, loading trucks, scanning Barsies, keeping his head down. The kind of job where you could go weeks without anyone learning your first name. That suited him fine. He clocked in at 11, clocked out at 7, drove home in silence, slept until mid-afternoon if the dreams let him. Then he'd wake, shower, eat something that didn't require much thought, and do it all again. People at work assumed he was just quiet, kept to himself. They didn't know that every time a forklift beeped in reverse, his pulse spiked. Didn't know that he took the long route home every single night to avoid the intersection on Highway 9. Didn't know that he couldn't ride in the passenger seat of any vehicle without his hands going numb. The crash had happened on a Wednesday, November, rain coming down in sheets, the kind that turns asphalt into black glass. He'd been 28, driving home from a friend's place where he'd stayed too long, had 2 beers too many, laughed too loud, felt normal for a few hours. The road curved. He took it too fast. The tires lost grip. And then the world became headlights and the scream of metal and a telephone pole that didn't move. The other car. God, the other car. A sedan, dark blue, a father and his 10-year-old daughter coming back from a recital. The father had been driving carefully under the speed limit, doing everything right. But physics doesn't care about right. When his car skidded through the intersection, it caught the sedan on the passenger side. The girl's side. He remembered crawling out of his overturned truck. Remembered the rain on his face mixing with something warmer. Remembered stumbling toward the wreck and seeing the little girl's face pressed against cracked glass, eyes open, not moving. Remembered the father screaming her name. Remembered sirens. Remembered a paramedic pulling him back, telling him to sit down, telling him he was bleeding, but he couldn't feel anything except the weight of what he'd just done. The girl survived. Traumatic brain injury, 3 surgeries, months in rehabilitation. He learned all this from the court proceedings, from the lawyer his insurance company hired, from newspaper articles he read until his eyes burned. The father, Marcus Chen, 41, high school science teacher, survived with a broken collarbone and lacerations. But his daughter, Emily, would never be the same. Permanent cognitive impairment, speech difficulties. The right side of her body would never quite cooperate the way the left side did. He pled guilty to reckless driving, lost his license for 2 years, paid fines he couldn't afford, did community service. The Chens didn't pursue a civil suit. He didn't know if that made it better or worse. The lawyer said he was lucky. He wanted to laugh at that word, but he'd forgotten how. The father sent him 1 letter, about a year after the crash. He kept it in a drawer he never opened, but he'd memorized every word before he put it away. It wasn't forgiving. It wasn't angry. It was just exhausted. It said Emily was making progress. It said therapy was helping. It said Marcus didn't know how to feel about him, the man who'd destroyed his daughter's future. But that hate was too heavy to carry alongside everything else. It said not to contact them. It said goodbye. He honored that. He didn't contact them. But he thought about them every single day. 10 years. He'd built his entire life around the space that guilt carved out. He didn't date, didn't make friends, didn't take vacations or celebrate holidays. On Emily's birthday, March 14th, he knew it from the court documents, he'd donate to brain injury foundations. On the anniversary of the crash, he'd drive out to the intersection after they'd repaired it, after they'd replaced the telephone pole, and he'd just stand there in the dark until the cold drove him back to his truck. His mother called once a month. He never told her the real reason he'd moved 3 states away. Said it was for work, said he was fine. She worried anyway. His younger sister sent Christmas cards he didn't open. Old friends stopped trying to reach him after the second year. He told himself it was better this way, safer. He was a loaded gun, best kept locked away. The nightmares came in cycles, sometimes every night for weeks. Sometimes they'd vanish for months, and he'd start to think maybe he was healing. Maybe time really did do what people claimed. And then he'd smell rain on hot asphalt or hear a child laugh in a certain pitch. And that night, the dreams would come back, and he'd wake up gasping, his sheets soaked. The girl's face pressed against the glass, eyes open, not moving, over and over and over. He saw a therapist for 6 months, right after the crash. She was kind. She talked about PTSD, about survivor's guilt, about the way trauma rewires the brain. She gave him breathing exercises and homework assignments and said healing wasn't linear. But sitting in that office, talking about himself, felt obscene, indulgent. Like he was asking for sympathy he didn't deserve, so he stopped going. Told himself he'd just push through. That's what you did. You pushed through. Except he wasn't pushing through. He was just existing in the margins, taking up as little space as possible, moving through the world like a ghost haunting his own life. It was a Friday in November when she knocked, 10 years and 3 weeks after the crash. He'd just gotten home from work, peeled off his steel-toed boots, microwaved leftovers he wouldn't finish. The rain had started around dawn, and by evening it was coming down steady, that same relentless rhythm that made his chest tight and his hands shake. He'd taken a shower to wash off the warehouse dust, pulled on sweatpants and an old t-shirt, and was considering whether to attempt sleep or just stare at the ceiling until his next shift. The knock was soft, hesitant. He almost didn't hear it over the rain. He froze. He never got visitors. Never. The landlord texted if something needed fixing. Delivery drivers left packages on the porch. He didn't know his neighbors beyond a nod. For a moment he thought maybe he'd imagined it, but then it came again. 3 knocks. Patient. Deliberate. He moved to the door like he was approaching an unexploded bomb. Through the peephole he could see a young woman, early 20s maybe, standing under the small overhang, hood of her jacket pulled up against the rain. She was looking down at something in her hands, a phone maybe, or a piece of paper. He didn't open the door. She knocked again. "Hello, I'm looking for Owen Garrett." His name in a stranger's mouth, his pulse hammered. He still didn't move. "I know you're home," she said. Her voice was clear, steady, not threatening, not pleading, just factual. "I can see your truck in the driveway. I need to talk to you, please. It's about the accident." The accident. Not an accident. The accident. Singular, specific, the only one that mattered. His hand was on the deadbolt before he consciously decided to open the door. Maybe because he'd been waiting for this moment for 10 years. Maybe because some part of him believed he deserved whatever was coming. He unlocked it, pulled it open, stood there in his bare feet and old clothes, staring at the girl on his porch. She pushed her hood back. Her face was heart-shaped, pale, with dark eyes that held his gaze without flinching. Her hair was black, pulled into a ponytail, rain-damp at the edges. She was small, delicate features. There was something in the angle of her chin, the set of her mouth, that pinged recognition in his brain even before she said it. "I'm Emily Chen." The world tilted. He grabbed the doorframe. Emily Chen. The girl, the passenger seat, the eyes that wouldn't move. Except she wasn't a girl anymore. She was standing in front of him, breathing, speaking, alive in a way his nightmares never let her be. "I know you probably weren't expecting this," she said. She was holding a worn notebook and a phone. "I should have called first, or emailed, but I didn't have your number, and I couldn't find an email, and I needed to do this in person." He couldn't form words. His throat had sealed shut. She took a small step back, maybe reading the shock on his face. "I'm sorry. This is a lot. I can come back another time if—" "No," he managed. His voice came out like gravel. "No, you can come in." He stepped aside. She hesitated for just a moment, then crossed the threshold. He closed the door behind her, and suddenly the small living room felt even smaller. She stood in the middle of it, dripping slightly, looking around at the bare walls, the single chair, the closed blinds. "Can I take your jacket?" he asked, operating on autopilot, some distant muscle memory of hospitality. "Sure. Thanks." She shrugged it off, and he hung it on the hook by the door. Underneath, she wore jeans and a sweater. Normal clothes. She looked normal. She looked nothing like the shattered child he'd carried in his head for a decade. "Do you want coffee? Or tea?" I think I have tea somewhere." "Water's fine." He went to the kitchen, grateful for the excuse to turn away, to do something with his hands. He filled a glass from the tap, realized it probably should be cold, dumped it, got ice, filled it again. When he turned back, she was sitting on the edge of the couch, the notebook open on her lap. He handed her the water. She thanked him. He stood there, unsure, then sat in the chair across from her. The silence stretched. Rain drummed on the roof. "You probably have questions," she said. He had about 1,000. He started with, "How did you find me?" "It took a while," she admitted. "I started looking about a year ago. The police report had your name. I found some old addresses, but you'd moved. Then I found property records, a work history check site. Figured out you were in this state. Called some distribution centers until one confirmed someone by your name worked night shift. Showed up tonight and just waited in the parking lot until you left. Followed you home." She said it matter-of-factly, like it was a minor inconvenience rather than a borderline stalking mission. I never thought—" He stopped, started again. "Your father. The letter he sent. He asked me not to contact you." "I know. I read it. I went through his papers a few months ago." She paused. "He died last year, stroke, very sudden. The room seemed to lose oxygen." "I'm sorry," he whispered. The words were pathetic, inadequate, but they were all he had. She nodded. "Thank you. It's been hard. He was everything. After Mom left, she couldn't handle it, couldn't handle me. It was just him and me. He rebuilt his whole life around keeping me alive, keeping me functional. And then, he was just gone." Owen sat very still. The guilt he'd carried for 10 years was now joined by a new layer. Marcus Chen had survived the crash only to die alone, his whole life defined by the wreckage of that night. "He never blamed you the way you probably think," Emily said. She was looking down at the notebook now, her finger tracing the edge of a page. "I found his journals after he died. He wrote a lot, about the accident, about me, about you." Owen's chest constricted. "What did he say?" "He was angry at first. Of course he was. You took his daughter's brain, her future. But he was also angry at himself, for not seeing the car sooner, for not swerving harder, for being on that road at that time. He was angry at the rain, at the city for not fixing that intersection sooner, at the universe for being random and cruel. The anger had a lot of targets." She looked up at him. But mostly he was just tired. Tired of being angry. Tired of carrying it. He had every right. "I'm not here to tell you what he had a right to feel," she interrupted gently. "I'm here because I need to tell you something. Something he never got to say because he thought finding you would just reopen everything, and he didn't want that for either of you." Owen waited. His hands were clenched so tight his knuckles were white. Emily flipped through the notebook until she found a page marked with a yellow, sticky note. "He wrote this about 3 years ago. After a therapy session. I'm going to read it, okay?" He nodded. He didn't trust his voice. She cleared her throat. "Saw Owen Garrett today. Not in person. Just saw his name in an old folder while cleaning the office. Thought about looking him up, didn't. Emily asked about him last week. She doesn't remember the crash, but she knows it happened. Knows there was another driver. She asked if I hate him. I told her no. I don't think she believed me. Truth is, I don't know what I feel. He made a mistake, a terrible one. But I've been teaching teenagers for 20 years. I know what bad decisions look like. I know the difference between malice and stupidity and just plain bad luck. He wasn't malicious. He was young, careless, impaired. He destroyed my life. But I've destroyed parts of my own life too, in different ways. I've been so consumed by what he took from Emily that I forgot to see what she still has. She's alive. She's smart. Smarter than people give her credit for. She works so hard, she has friends, she laughs. She's not the daughter I expected, but she's still my daughter, and that's not nothing. Maybe it's time I let go of the ghost of the girl she might have been and love the one sitting across from me at dinner. As for Owen Garrett, wherever he is, I hope he's found some kind of peace. I hope he hasn't spent the last 7 years hating himself the way I hated him, because that kind of hate doesn't bring anyone back. It just makes the world smaller. She closed the notebook. The silence that followed was deafening. Owen's vision blurred. He pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes, tried to breathe, couldn't. A sound came out of him that wasn't quite a sob, more like something breaking. He folded forward, elbows on his knees, face in his hands, and let it come. 10 years of it. The guilt, the grief, the self-loathing, the loneliness. It poured out of him in shaking gasps he couldn't control. He felt her move, felt her sit on the arm of the chair beside him. She didn't touch him, didn't say anything, just sat there while he fell apart. When he could finally breathe again, when the storm passed and left him hollowed out, he straightened up, wiped his face with his sleeve. "I'm sorry," he said. "Don't be. I destroyed your life. Both of you. Everything you could have been." "You don't get to decide what I could have been," she said, not unkindly. "I don't even know what I could have been. The crash happened when I was 10. I don't remember who I was before. The girl in the hospital bed learning to walk again, learning to talk again, that's the only me I've ever known. And yeah, it's hard. It's been really hard. I have cognitive delays, processing issues. I can't drive. I probably never will. I take medication for seizures. I need more time on tests. People talk to me like I'm a child sometimes, and I'm 20 years old." Her voice was steady, but there was pain underneath. Real pain. She wasn't minimizing. "I did that to you," he said. "You were part of what happened to me, but you're not the only part." She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, mirroring his earlier posture. "Did you know the traffic report said the road was rated as hazardous that night? Visibility under 50 feet. There'd been 2 other accidents at that intersection in the 6 months before ours. The city had complaints about the lack of warning signs, about the curve being too sharp for the speed limit. Nothing got fixed until after our crash. Then suddenly they cared." He stared at her. "I was drunk." "You were over the limit. Barely. 0.09. And yeah, you shouldn't have been driving. But the investigating officer noted that weather was the primary contributing factor. The road conditions, the lack of adequate signage. Your impairment was listed as secondary." She pulled out her phone, scrolled, showed him a photo of a police report. "I got the full file last year. Dad never showed me. He probably never read it that closely either. He just knew you'd been drinking, and that was enough." Owen shook his head. "That doesn't matter. I made the choice to—" "I'm not saying you're blameless," Emily cut in. "I'm saying it's more complicated than the story you've been telling yourself. My dad's journals, the police report, even the letters from his insurance company, everything points to a situation where a lot of things went wrong at once. You, the rain, the road, the timing. Take any one of those factors away, and maybe nothing happens. Or maybe it happens worse. We don't get to know. But I was the one who— You were the one who survived and decided to stop living." Her voice was sharper now, cutting through his protests. "That's what I see. I looked you up. I know you work nights at a warehouse. I know you rent this place month to month. I know you don't have social media, don't have an online presence, don't seem to have any friends or family nearby. You're punishing yourself. You've built a prison and thrown away the key." He couldn't argue because she was right. "My dad did the same thing," she continued, softer now. "Different prison, but same idea. He quit teaching for 2 years to take care of me. When he went back, he never dated, never traveled, never did anything for himself. His whole world was me and my recovery, and I loved him for it, but I also hated it, because I knew I was the reason he stopped being a whole person. That's not your fault, and the crash isn't yours alone." She met his eyes. "That's what I came here to tell you, that carrying this by yourself is just another way of making it about you. My dad carried it. I carry it. Other people who loved us carry it. But you don't get to claim the entire weight. You don't get to be the only villain in the story." The words hit like a fist to the sternum. He'd never thought about it that way. For 10 years, his guilt had been the center of his universe, his punishment, his suffering. He'd never considered that maybe in some twisted way that was its own kind of selfishness. "I don't know how to not feel this," he admitted. "I don't either," she said. "I feel guilty for surviving when I know other kids with TBIs who didn't. I feel guilty that my dad sacrificed so much. I feel guilty that I'll never be normal. Guilt is it's part of it, but it doesn't have to be the only thing." They sat in the quiet for a while. The rain had softened to a drizzle. Through the window, streetlights made halos in the mist. "Why did you really come here?" Owen asked. "It wasn't just to tell me about your dad's journals." Emily was quiet for a moment. "I wanted to see if you were real. For 10 years you've been this shadow figure in my life, the man who hit us, the bad driver, the reason everything changed. But you weren't a person. You were just a placeholder for everything bad that happened. And I needed you to be real, because if you're real, if you're just some guy who made a mistake and has been drowning in it ever since, then maybe the universe isn't as cruel as it feels. Maybe it's just random and messy and we're all doing the best we can." He didn't know what to say to that. "Also," she added, "I'm applying to colleges. Finally. I want to study social work, help other people with brain injuries, help their families navigate the system. And on every application there's this essay question, describe a challenge you've overcome. And I keep writing about the crash, about my recovery, but it always feels incomplete. Because I've never faced the person who was there, never looked him in the eye, so I guess I needed this. Needed closure, or whatever you want to call it." "Did you get it?" he asked. She considered. "I don't know yet, but I think so. Or at least I got something." Owen looked at her. Really looked at her. This young woman who'd tracked him down, who'd confronted her past, who was trying to build a future despite everything. And he thought about Marcus Chen, dying of a stroke, his heart literally giving out under the weight of everything he'd carried. And he thought about himself, alive but not living, taking up space but making no mark, stuck in amber at 28 years old. "Your dad," he said slowly, "in the letter he sent me. He said not to contact you, but he didn't say I couldn't try to fix it, whatever that means." "There's nothing to fix," Emily said. "I'm never going to be uninjured. My dad's never coming back. The past is the past. Then what am I supposed to do? Stop wasting the life you still have." She said it simply, like it was obvious. "You got to walk away. I know that's not fair, and I know you wish you hadn't. But you did. You have a life. Use it. Do something with it. Because if you don't, then the crash really did kill everyone involved. Just took you longer to die." The truth of it sat between them. Undeniable. Uncomfortable. "I don't know how," he said. "I've been stuck here so long. I don't know what moving forward even looks like." "Small steps," she said. "That's what my physical therapist always said. Small steps. You don't have to become a different person overnight. Just do one thing different. Tomorrow, next week, whenever, one thing." "Like what?" "I don't know. Turn the porch light on, call your mom, see a therapist, volunteer somewhere, buy a plant and keep it alive. Something that isn't just surviving." He almost smiled at the plant suggestion. Almost. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure. Do you—" He stopped, started again. "Do you forgive me?" Emily was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was careful. "I don't think forgiveness is mine to give. You didn't do anything to me personally. You made a choice that had consequences, and I'm one of them. But I don't hate you. I don't think I ever hated you. I was too young to understand at first, and by the time I was old enough, you were just part of the story. The past. I'm more interested in the future now." "That's not really an answer." "No," she agreed. "It's not. But it's the only one I have." Fair enough, he thought. She stood up. "I should go. It's late, and you probably have work." He stood too. "Thank you," he said, "for coming here, for saying what you said. I don't know if it helps, but thank you." "Maybe it will help, eventually." She picked up her jacket, shrugged it on. "Can I leave you my number in case you ever want to talk or update me or whatever?" "Yeah, of course." She pulled out her phone. He gave her his number. She sent a quick text so he'd have hers. "I'm serious about the therapy thing," she said as he walked her to the door. "You need to talk to someone who isn't a 20-year-old girl you almost killed." He winced at the bluntness, but nodded. At the door, she paused. "One more thing." In Dad's journals, he wrote that he drove past the intersection once, about 5 years after the crash. He said he sat there for an hour trying to feel something, anger, sadness, anything. But he felt nothing. It was just a road. The meaning we give it is ours. It's not built into the pavement. She left then, stepping out into the drizzle, pulling her hood up, walking to a small sedan parked at the curb. He watched her drive away, her taillights disappearing around the corner. Then he closed the door and stood in the dim living room, feeling like he'd just survived something. Or maybe started surviving. The next morning, he didn't go straight to bed after work. Instead, he drove to the intersection. Highway 9, the curve, the place where the telephone pole used to be. It looked different in daylight, mundane, just another stretch of road with new warning signs and a lower speed limit. Cars passed without slowing. The world had moved on. He sat in his truck for a while, engine running, watching the traffic. Emily was right. It was just a road. The crash lived in his memory, not in the asphalt. He went home, slept for a few hours. When he woke, he did something he hadn't done in 10 years. He opened the drawer with Marcus Chen's letter, read it again with new eyes, the exhaustion in the words, the grief, but also the restraint, the dignity. Marcus hadn't cursed him or wished him dead. He'd just asked to be left alone. And Owen had honored that by disappearing from his own life. He found a piece of paper and a pen, sat at the kitchen table, started writing. "Dear Emily, I don't know if you want to hear from me, or if this is crossing a line, but I wanted to say something I didn't say last night. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for driving when I shouldn't have. I'm sorry for the pain I caused you and your father. I'm sorry for taking a normal night and turning it into the worst night. I know sorry doesn't fix anything. I know it doesn't give you back what you lost. But it's true, and I wanted you to hear it directly. You asked me what I'm supposed to do now. I'm going to try. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I'm going to try. I called a therapist today. First appointment is next week. I also called my mum. We talked for an hour. I'm going to visit her for Thanksgiving. Baby steps, right? I'm leaving this town. Not running away this time, just moving towards something instead of away from it. I don't know what yet. Maybe somewhere with people. Maybe somewhere I can do work that matters. Maybe somewhere I can turn the porch light on and not feel like I'm taking up space I don't deserve. Thank you for tracking me down. Thank you for being brave enough to knock on that door. Thank you for telling me about your dad. I wish I could have known him. I wish I could have apologized to him. But I can honor his memory by doing what he did. Moving forward, taking care of the people who matter, finding meaning in the mess. I hope your college applications go well. I hope you become an amazing social worker. I hope you find whatever you're looking for. And if you ever need anything, and I know that sounds hollow coming from me, but if you ever do, you have my number. Owen. He sealed it in an envelope, addressed it to her, mailed it the next day. He didn't know if she'd write back. That wasn't the point. The point was taking the step. 3 weeks later, he went to his first therapy session. Dr. Patel was patient, asked good questions, didn't let him off easy. They talked about PTSD, about survivor's guilt, about the way he'd constructed his identity around the crash. It was hard. Sometimes he left sessions feeling worse, like he'd been scrubbed raw, but he kept going back. He gave notice at the warehouse. Decided to move back to his home state, closer to family. Found a job at a non-profit that worked with at-risk youth, teaching job skills, helping kids who'd made mistakes find their way back. It felt right. Felt like something Marcus might approve of. Before he left, he drove to the cemetery where Marcus Chen was buried. He'd found the location online, stood at the grave with a bouquet of flowers he wasn't sure how to place. "I met your daughter," he said to the headstone. "She's incredible. You did a good job. I'm sorry I didn't get to tell you that." He left the flowers, walked back to his truck, turned the key, drove away. Emily texted him a month later. Got into 3 schools, going to state, Social work program starts in the fall. Thanks for the letter. Glad you're getting help, he replied. Congratulations. You're going to be great at it. She sent back a thumbs up emoji. He started running in the mornings. Not far, just a mile or two, but it felt good to push his body, to sweat out some of the tension he'd been carrying. He adopted a dog from a shelter, a mutt named Charlie, who had his own trauma history, who flinched at loud noises but was learning to trust again. They learned together. On the anniversary of the crash, year 11, he didn't drive to the intersection. Instead, he volunteered at a local brain injury support group, helping set up chairs, making coffee, listening to families tell their stories. It wasn't penance. It was just being present, being useful. He thought about Emily often, wondered how school was going, wondered if she'd found her closure. He didn't reach out. She had his number. The door was open if she needed it. One night, almost a year after she'd knocked on his door, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number with a photo attached. He opened it. It was Emily in a cap and gown holding a diploma, standing next to an older couple who was smiling. The caption read, "Associate's degree, social work. First step. Thanks for taking yours." He stared at the photo for a long time. Then he saved it. He didn't have many photographs, but he kept this one, a reminder that the past doesn't have to be the end of the story. That people are resilient. That mistakes don't define you unless you let them. He texted back, "Proud of you." She replied, "Proud of us." He turned off his phone, looked around his new apartment, bigger than the old place, with windows that let in light, with pictures on the walls of his family, his dog, moments that mattered. The porch light was on. It had been on every night since he moved in. He wasn't fixed. Healing wasn't linear, his old therapist had said. There were still bad days. Days when the smell of rain sent him spiraling. Days when he wondered if he deserved any of this, the job, the dog, the second chance Emily had given him just by showing up. But those days were farther apart now, and on the good days, he could see the shape of a life that meant something. Not the life he'd planned at 28, but a life nonetheless. He'd stopped counting the days since the crash, started counting other things instead. The number of kids he'd helped find work, the number of miles he and Charlie had walked, the number of times he'd called his mom just to hear her voice. Small victories, small steps. 10 years he'd spent in the dark. Now he was learning to live in the light. It was terrifying. It was uncomfortable. It was worth it. Because Emily was right. The crash had happened. The damage was real. But if he spent the rest of his life punishing himself for it, then the crash really would kill everyone involved. And Marcus Chen, for all his anger and exhaustion and grief, had chosen love over hate in the end, had chosen to see Owen as a person, flawed and broken but still human. The least Owen could do was try to be worthy of that grace, to honor it by living, by doing better, by being more than the sum of his worst mistake. The porch light stayed on, the door stayed unlocked. Not because he expected more visitors from the past, but because he was finally ready to let the future in. Some stories don't have neat endings. Some wounds don't fully heal. But sometimes survival is enough. Sometimes just showing up day after day, doing the work, taking the steps. Sometimes that's the whole point. And if that resonates with you, if stories like this remind you that grace and second chances are possible, that healing is messy but real, then maybe you'll want to stay connected. Hit that subscribe button, because these are the kinds of human stories we tell here, the ones that stay with you long after the words end.